What is up, guys? We got week 4 of the book club, and as always, we're reading Tactical Fly Fisher by Devin Olson. Today, we're doing the second half of chapter 2, which finishes up the gear and rigging section. And so, this is kind of an interesting section. And this book club's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be kind of sharing with you the gear that I use, that being rods, tippet, reels and lines and stuff like that, not actual gear. I do have a gear video out there of the stuff that I use. I'll leave the link to that in the description, but this is going basis on the stuff of what Devin talks about in the book. And so he likes, at least what he talks about in the book, he likes having the right tool for the right job, which is great. And I definitely agree with that statement. However, the normal fisherman does not have a tool for every situation. So I think for the average fisherman, for you and me, and I mean even myself in competition, I only have 2 specific rods for competition at this moment. Just purchased one this last spring. But getting by with the equipment we need, and I'm a big believer that the rod, it's not all about what rod you're fishing. I know some rods are better than others, but for us on a budget, for us that don't have the ability to buy tools for each situation, this is the stuff that I use. So let's get into it. So the first thing that he talks about in the chapter is tippet, and he talks about how there's so many different controversies and arguments and agreements about tippet, what kind, what size, nylon, do we go fluorocarbon? And so what I'm fishing right now, and what he says in the book is that you ask any competitor on the world stage at Worlds, each one of them has their own favorite tippet. They have their own ideas about nylon or fluoro. It's just a toss-up. Find a good tippet is what he says. Find something that works for you. Use trial and error. I've used a lot of different tippets from Orvis, Mirage, and the Mono, the Super Strong, and Cortland, the premium. I've never used the ultra premium. I refuse to spend that much for tippet. Right now I'm fishing this Umpqua 6X, which is the tippet that I'm using right now, and this is just nylon. I'm up in the air between fluoro and nylon. I really haven't found a difference myself. It's something that I'm still exploring, and I'm just looking for something that I'm confident where my knots are good, has good strong, it's resistant, it doesn't abrase quite as easily and whatnot. So that's what I'm looking for in tippet, and that's what I'm using right now. It's not saying that's what I'm going to use a month from now, but that's definitely what I'm using right now. So for rods, the big thing about a rod is you want to have your rod balanced at the cork. So with your reel on there, you want to be able to balance your entire rod. Now I don't have, this is just the butt section of my rod. You want to be able to balance it here at the butt with the reel on it. That way it's not as hard and not as difficult for you when you're fishing all day. So this rod right here is the Syndicate P2 Pipeline. This is the 10-foot 3-weight version. This is my main Euro nymphing rod. Whenever I'm throwing a Euro nymphing leader, this is the rod I'm using. This is the only rod that I actually have bought specifically for Euro nymphing. I have fished the P2 Pipeline, and it's 11-foot 3-weight. I love that rod as well. I traded it for my lake rod. But for Euro nymphing, this is a good rod. It's not super expensive. It's not going to break the bank. And like I said, I've gotten used to this. I've gotten used to its tendencies, how it casts, and I've just developed myself with this rod. So I'm very confident in this rod. And he also talks in the chapter that a good all-around rod for fishing, a variety of different methods. Like I said, if you don't have the individual tools for each situation and you just want one tool that can get by with many different situations, kind of like your Swiss Army knife is a 10-foot 3-weight. And I just picked this up this spring. This is a 10-foot 3-weight from Orvis. This is the Orvis Clearwater Euro nymphing rod. I use this rod primarily for fishing dry flies and for fishing dry dropper. What I do fish dry dropper on my normal Syndicate when I have a dry dropper leader on there. However, when I have a dry dropper specific line or leader, or a dry dropper specific or a dry fly specific leader, or a dry dropper specific leader, I fish this rod. And the reason I mainly bought this rod over something else, one, didn't break the bank, two, is because the reel I got with it. It came with this Orvis Clearwater reel that balances it. It also came strung with the Orvis nymphing line, the tactical nymphing line. And the reason I wanted the Orvis nymphing line specifically, as we'll get into my other nymphing line for my Euro setup, the Orvis Tactical Nymph line is not a level line. It's a very thin leader. A very thin line compared to others, but it's also a double taper, and I believe it's either a 1-weight double taper or a 0-weight double taper, and I wanted that specifically tapered and a little bit thicker so that I could throw dries. He talks about, specifically with lines in the book, how you want delicacy when you're fishing dry flies, and that comes from avoiding all-purpose lines. You know, when you buy a normal rod that's strung up, you know, like this was a rod and reel combo with the backing and the line already on there for me. When you buy that, it tends to be an all-purpose line, and that's not ideal for fishing dry flies. And he also talks about downsizing 1-weight. So if you're fishing a 3-weight, try fishing a 2-weight line. Now he likes specifically, what he talks about in the book is lines designed for fishing dry flies, you know, stuff from Cortland, stuff from Scientific Angler, stuff from Orvis, stuff like that. Now this 1-weight double taper nymphing line is something my buddy Rich put me onto. It's something that I've tried. I've really enjoyed fishing this for dries and dry dropper. I have a lot more practice to do with it, but it's worked well for me, and that's what I like right now for those types of situations. And so then getting into my Euro nymphing setup, I fish the Cabela's RLS reel. This is just taken off my old RLS combo that I started fishing when, you know, I started trout fishing really. And so I took it off. It balances my syndicate pretty well. The line on here is a Cortland Euro nymphing line. It's the level line. It's like the .0022 millimeter line. It's the smallest it can be and still maintain competition regulations. And the cool thing is, with this monocore, you can see here kind of where my leader is attached to my fly line. There's a little bit of break there. I actually stripped away the edge of that line, stripped it away, and I can just tie a blood knot to my leader, and that's really nice because a blood knot is so much easier to tie than a nail knot. Plus this slides through my guides so much easier. And he talks about in the book how if you have, you know, a braided core line, Cortland also makes a braid core. I guess that's a little bit better for cold conditions other than the monocore. I personally like the monocore, but you can do like a glue splice, and he has links to that on his website and whatnot, and I'll leave that stuff in the description. But basically, just have reels that balance your rod, have lines that are for what you want, have tools for what you need. You know, have a rod that's good for all around Euro nymphing. And you know, I can, if say I didn't own this syndicate, you know, I had this syndicate before I had the Clearwater, and I just wanted to buy one rod. You know, I think this Clearwater, and I've never Euro nymphed with it, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think this Clearwater would be a great rod. You know, I have my setup, you know, with this reel. You know, I just can fish dry dropper with it, with my double taper line on there, fish a dry fly, and then I could just switch the reel, and then I can just switch it over to a Euro nymphing, you know, setup. You know, reels are a lot cheaper, especially, you know, a cheap little Cabela's reel. You know, the reel is just basically holding your line and weighting your rod. It's not really anything special, so it's much easier to have a cheap reel, and they even make cassette reels, but having a cheap reel with a different line on it, so that you have the tools for your situation without breaking the bank. So that's my thoughts on chapter 2. I really enjoyed reading the book. Hope you guys all took something away from this. If you did, like the video, subscribe, do all that stuff, and we will see you in the next one.